So with that, I'd like to call the regular meeting of Township Council for the purposes of a public hearing for Monday, December 4th to order. Of course, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the public hearing tonight takes place on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and in particular acknowledge our unique and valued relationships with the Katzie-Kwalin, Matsqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. With that, Mr. Cooner, could you please get the preamble? I guess we'll read the preamble first.
A public hearing is a statutory requirement under Section 464 of the Local Government Act and must be held before third reading of a community plan, land use contract amendment bylaw, heritage designation bylaw, or heritage revitalization agreement bylaw. During a public hearing, council acts in a quasi-judicial role for the purpose of allowing persons who believe their interest in property is affected by a bylaw, permit, or other matter to make representations to council either orally, by written submission, or to add comments to or elaborate upon correspondence that may have already been presented to council concerning the bylaws. It is important to note that council is not able to receive any additional information on the bylaws following the public hearing as dictated by case law. The hearing procedure involves an explanation from the Community Development Division on the purpose of the proposed bylaws and to hear from individuals regarding the bylaws. In order to ensure that all interested parties have a reasonable opportunity to be heard, speakers are requested to keep representations as brief and succinct as possible and no longer than 5 minutes in duration, excluding the time required for questions from council. Speakers will be asked to state their name, neighborhood, and city for the record. And if referring to prepared remarks, to submit copies of these to the township clerk. Decorum must be always maintained. This includes refraining from applause, booing, or heckling. To assist with large numbers of speakers, individuals must advise the township clerk and sign the speakers list prior to the commencement of the public hearing. The names on the speakers list will be read out during the hearing. Individuals who have already addressed council and wish to add further submissions will wait until the people that have not yet addressed council have had an opportunity to speak. All submissions and speaker lists are considered part of the public record. Council members should not express their views nor debate the bylaws. However, they may question speakers to clarify particular points in their submissions. Council may consider third reading or third reading and final adoption at this meeting or at its next regular meeting. Thank you.
So that get a motion to adopt the agenda, moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Rint. Call a question on A1. That carries unanimously. Mr. Cooner, item B1.
Yes, Your Worship. Item B1 is revisions to the proposed Williams Neighborhood Plan. That is bylaw number 5799, which amends the Langley Official Community Plan by providing a revised neighborhood plan for the Williams area. It amends the Willoughby Community Plan by incorporating the revised Williams Neighborhood Plan and related amendments into the Willoughby Community Plan. And it proposes to provide more residential density and mixed-use development in urban park areas. The notification for bylaw 5799 are as follows. Newspaper advertisements for the proposed bylaw did run on November 27th and 30th, 2023 edition of the Langley Advance Times pursuant to the Local Government Act. 923 public hearing notices for the proposed bylaws in the form of address-specific postcards were sent to registered owners and or occupants on November 22nd, 2023 in the neighborhood planning area, plus surrounding properties that are within 5 properties on a roadway and within 100 meters of the plan pursuant to the Local Government Act. And before you is the existing plan, which is bylaw number 5335, and the updated plan, which is bylaw number 5799. We have received 9 written submissions. We have 2 registered speakers on the speakers list. The first speaker is Nicole Clark, and the second speaker is Sean Bouchard.
Great. Nicole Clark, please come forward. Oh, sorry, turn your mic on. There we go. Go ahead.
For the record, Nicole Clark, Walnut Grove, Langley. My name is Nicole Clark, and I am Corporate Legal Counsel for Lorval Capital Management Ltd., which provides business services to a group of companies in Langley, which includes landowners in the Williams neighborhood. I have come tonight to express concerns that have been brought to my attention regarding amendments to the Williams Neighborhood Plan Bylaw number 5799. As we understand it, bylaw number 5799 arose out of the motion to reconsider 2 bylaws that impacted lands to the south of 80th Avenue, which we do not own. However, the amendments that were presented to Council at the November 20th, 2023 meeting that came about as a result of the public hearing on October 23rd, 2023, far exceeded the scope of the bylaws that were initially reconsidered and sent to staff, as they then impacted our lands north of 80th. Because the scope of the amendments proposed in bylaw number 5799 changed so drastically and quickly, there was no time for early and ongoing consultation with landowners on these amendments. Any consultation on the previous version of bylaw number 5799 could not be said to apply to this version, given how different it is. This failure of process is unlawful in that it has failed to comply with the Local Government Act and the Township of Langley's own bylaw that governs amending procedures. The requirement is early and ongoing consultation, and neither has occurred on this matter. To approve the Williams neighborhood revision in these circumstances would be both procedurally and substantively unfair to the landowners who have made a significant investment in the Williams neighborhood. The landowners object to the approval of the proposed Williams neighborhood revision. The amendment to the Williams neighborhood plan forms a part of the Township of Langley's official community plan, and under the Local Government Act, an amendment to which requires early and ongoing consultation with affected stakeholders. This obligation is in addition to the public hearing required. No such consultation occurred, and given the drastic changes to land use designation that was proposed, this requirement is inescapable. Regarding the proposed neighborhood revision, the Township of Langley has failed to follow the appropriate procedural standards that it has set for itself under its bylaws. The Township of Langley is required to exercise its authority in good faith and in the public interest. Given the magnitude of these changes to the Williams neighborhood revision, it should be self-evident that the proposed amendments will materially impact the landowners' legal rights and interest in the North Williams lands. In this regard, we note with concern Mayor Woodward's remarks at the July 24th, 2023 council meeting that with an alleged 5-year interperiod of no activity, the North Williams lands are a, quote, blank canvas which this council can revisit. This remark is inaccurate, both factually and legally, and reflects a demonstrable lack of consideration for the landowner's legitimate interests. In any event, there is no evident compelling public interest that demands urgent changes to the Williams neighborhood plan be approved without ensuring that proper procedures are followed. Any approval at this stage would be open to challenges on the above described bases. Given the latest revision of bylaw number 5799 has only been available since November 20th, 2023, the landowners have not yet had an opportunity to fully assess or discuss these and other potential impacts with the Township of Langley, as there has been no opportunity for consultation. To the extent the impact substantially and unreasonably interferes with the landowner's use of the North Williams lands, the landowners would be in a position to assert that the Williams neighborhood revision amounts to a de facto expropriation and to seek compensation for the value of the affected lands from the Township of Langley. The question then becomes, is the Township of Langley in a financial position to purchase those lands from the landowners at a market value which could exceed $100 million? In conclusion, we request that the Township of Langley withdraw and rescind the proposed Williams neighborhood revision. Any future proposal to amend the Williams neighborhood plan should be through a new process that meets with the applicable procedural requirements and includes appropriate consultation with the landowners from the outset. Thank you.
I have a question from Council. Councilor Ferguson.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Nicole Clark, for coming this evening. I was just, when we have correspondence information regarding lands, and is this your submission that you on our desk? It's a letter from I guess a Peter Kolensky.
So Peter Telensky is counsel for G&T Martini Holdings, which is also one of the landowners in North Williams.
Okay, the reason why I'm asking, it's almost a direct quote from this letter.
Yes.
Some of your comments.
We worked on it together.
Oh, okay, so this is your submission.
That's the written submission, yes.
Okay, that was my question. And the lands that you're talking about are the 7 properties listed in your correspondence.
That is correct.
Thank you very much for coming.
Great. Thank you for your submission. Next speaker is Sean Bouchard.
Sean Bouchard, Walnut Grove. I'm the COO of Lorvelle Developments. Thank you, Your Worship and Council, for the opportunity to discuss the proposed changes in the Williams Land Use Plan. I'll be discussing changes to the Land Use Plan north of 80th specifically. I'll be asking for, at the end, an amendment to the plan as presented or a deferral. Under the new plan, approximately 15 acres has been changed from light industrial and designated civic lands for a potential location of a new works yard, and 18 acres of commercial designation has been changed to light industrial. Specifically, I want to address the potential land use change from light industrial to civic use, as this has a very material impact to our proposal, which is 5 years in the making. If this plan change goes through as presented, we have to completely rethink the development, as 8 acres is on lands planned as part of the movie studio campus, and 7 acres is over top of the pond. This implies tanking the pond. The pond is currently designated at 7 acres, of which 3.9 acres is being used as environmental compensation, which has been approved by all government bodies. This cannot be reversed without severe consequences. The pond EWA and front ender was at 3rd reading and was prepared to go to final reading, and was referred back to staff on October 23rd of this year. Martini Group also received 3rd reading to start on the movie studio, and had even commenced significant work. The 8 acres of part of the change to civic lands is over top of that 3rd reading area. Referring back to staff, the pond EWA and front ender, with the proposed land use changes, has frozen the area and put all past work in jeopardy. Martini Group has spent over $4 million on planning, posted $7.8 million in bonds, done over $22 million in site work, not including the very substantial investment in the land. It is known in the industry that third reading is a substantial mark and becomes bankable. Moving to fourth reading is usually a formality. It is such a standard in the province that the BC government changed the rules to market projects from fourth reading to third. What contributions are the developers in this area making towards infrastructure? I would be including the 3 developers that own the majority of the land that are connected to the pond. $75.25 million will be spent building the roads, servicing the area, building the pond, and significant BC Hydro upgrades. It's broken down as follows. Building out and servicing 80th Avenue is $26.25 million. BC Hydro upgrades to service the neighborhood is $7.2 million. Pump station is $6.8 million. The detention pond after DCC rebates is over $35 million. Again, that total $75.25 million. In addition, there'll be about $9.7 million in DCCs paid for this project. 1,500 jobs are the estimate that will be created by this project. Another 200 to 1,000 jobs will be created throughout the valley from various film sets. Perfectly in line with the township's policy of having jobs close to home. 1.3 million square feet of light industrial warehouse is proposed on this site, which has all been planned. Annual tax revenue at final build out to the Township of Langley will be a low of 5.7 million to a high of 7.6 million. So the question is a works yard at a prominent corner in the Township of Langley what we want to look at? Are there better places to put a works yard that the land can be purchased for a far lower price, like converting some of the single-family land designation areas, or a rural land that's not in the agricultural land reserve? Would that not be a better use of the taxpayers' money? Why not spend $20 million for land in Salmon River on 56th and some of the RU1 zoning areas or something that's not in the ALC, instead of potentially over $100 million in this location? So what we're asking is that this plan get deferred, or an amendment is made to take the civic lands off the 8 acres, which affects a third reading Martini site that has already spent $26 million and is ready to build. And I would be asking that the pond EWA get reinstated as all the developers involved in it are ready to move forward. And that the service agreement for that area has already been approved and just needs to be bonded for. That's all I have to say. Is there any questions?
There is. Councilor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah, so let me understand this detention pond, because I was around, I think, for the original reading of this, and the detention pond was always supposed to be there. Now, am I understanding you correctly that if the detention, that monies have been expended by the developer or by the owners right now on putting the detention pond in place, but the detention pond would have to be removed now?
No, well, the land has been purchased, it's all been designed. What the intent is, and it's not a terrible idea, is tanking ponds, because then you can use the land above. But in this particular case, you can only tank 3 acres of it because 3.9 acres is designated as environmental compensation. So that would have to be reworked, and that's typically a 2-year process at the moment to get all those approvals by the government. It's very complex.
Okay.
Now, the money that's been spent has been preloading the site and getting it up to grade. Very significant, $22 million, because she had a third reading and then started commencing all the work, bonded $7.8 million to start the works. And so to unwind all that is a tremendous burden.
So prior to the October public hearing or the October decision of council, were the landowners north of 80th Avenue unaware that this was going to be happening?
So the initial plan, as you see in there, has the commercial area 18 acres. So the first idea was to change that to light industrial.
Yeah.
And then the second change with the civic lands came after. And so that happened because the first plan was deferred back to council, or sorry, back to staff, with the point of adding civic lands into the plan. And then it came out and then the public hearing was set.
So prior to that happening, was there ever any discussion with the owner or owners about civic lands in this plan?
There was something that was potentially, an idea floated like a red herring, but
Nothing firm?
nothing firm.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Great. Not seeing any other questions, council. Thank you for your submission.
Yeah.
Are there any other submissions from the public on item B1? For a second time, are there any other submissions from the public on item B1? Please come forward. Great, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. My name is James Perneau. I work for McElhaney Consulting. Our firm's representing a number of the applications in the area on the north side, residential on the north side on 212th Street, as well as lands to the south. Most of them are the same joint venture applicants, and there's a few others that are also clients of ours. First off, I just wanted to say that the comments in the prior delegations that came forward, I understand where they're coming from as it affects the north area. That was a bit of a surprise, I think, to them. And I want to reiterate the environmental issue, which was associated with the traditional in-ground detention pond and the area set aside as part of the compensation for all the water courses that were found, mostly on the north side. You'll see on the plan there's a 30-meter north-south corridor, as well as 3.9 acres, I think it was, on the near the detention pond. There's also a landmark plan for that area, so I'm not sure how that's an introductory to the neighborhood with a works yard there. Nothing against work yards, but I'm not sure if this is the right location for it. With respect to the lands to the south, well, I'll mention the residential lands to the north side of 80th Avenue. The plan largely doesn't touch those current land uses and designs. Both projects, there's two projects, a townhouse project and a single-family project, both at third reading. And they're very close to, single families are very close to final approval. On the south side, it's a completely different matter. Most of my comments relate to more general things such as the plan, road network, and the land use plan kind of are in conflict with each other in terms of the park and school land. We have roads that are curved in the road network, whereas in the land use plan that's showing tonight here, it's more squared off. There would have to be some changes made. The location of roundabouts close to 80th Avenue is probably not practical from a transportation point of view. We've tried it once already. We've gone through the design on the prior land use, so we found those sorts of things out. So I think, you know, the land use, I'm not really pointing at the land use as being problematic on the south side. I think there's an interesting vision that's being promoted here in the policies of the project, but getting it to work is a completely different thing. The first plan, we spent a lot of time adjusting the layouts and the whole road network grid to the south side of 80th, and it was quite complicated, and it took quite a time to get through. In looking at this one, there's probably some work to be done similarly. So, but we've been through it before, and you know, and with the input and agreement with Township at the development stage, you know, we think we can make things work out. So I guess my ask here tonight is to you know, in addition to supporting some of the comments that were made before by prior delegations, is to perhaps look at this again, maybe with revised road networks and layouts. We've been working on it since it came out, and we're going to have to work on it some more after this thing is adopted eventually, and it could be tonight. And you know, I think we need to work with staff to make sure that we can make this thing work from a transportation network point of view, coupled with the land use expectations that are shown on tonight's plan. So that's all I'd like to add at this time. Thank you very much for your time listening to me, and if you have any questions, let me know.
No, I see no questions from council. Thank you for your submission. Are there any other submissions from the public on item B1? For a second time, are there any other submissions from the public on item B1? For a third and final time, are there any further submissions from the public on item B1? So with that, I'll close the public hearing on item B1. Is there any member of council that wish to consider third and final reading? I'll move that. Is there a second? Or seconded by Councillor Rint. Call the question on considering B1. You didn't vote fast enough, did you? Were you in favor, Councillor Ferguson? Revote, please. Revote. Okay. Call the question again. B1. Wrong button. There we go. That carries with Councillor Richter, Councillor Kuntz opposed. I'll move the recommendation. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any speakers to Councillor Martins?
I just want clarification on exactly what we're voting on here.
The recommendation in the agenda.
Could you read that out by chance?
Mr. Cooner, you bring that up, I suppose? I have a couple of amendments too, once we're exhausted, the speakers. Very minor policy amendments.
Yes, Your Worship. The Bylaw 5799 amends the Willoughby Community Plan by incorporating the Williams Neighborhood Plan and related consequential amendments to the land use Willoughby Community Plan. So Council, the exact item before Council right now is granting third and final reading to the Williams Neighborhood Plan. The following recommendations are for the accompanying policies that the Council may want to consider. The first policy is the Willoughby Greenway Amenity Policy, number 07-234, as amended, and the Community Amenity Contribution Policy, number 07-166, as amended.
Yeah, so I've got really small amendments that I think we'd like to see adjudicated before any major discussions. Ms. Little, could you bring those up, please? This is the first one, so I'd like to move that amendment. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rint. So that reduces the minimum percentage of family-friendly units from 20% to 10% to be consistent with what Council did this afternoon. So moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on that amendment? It's just making it consistent with what we did this afternoon. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I'm actually a little concerned at some of the feedback that we've had tonight, particularly from the legal perspective, and
This would be on the amendment on the floor, Councilor.
Okay, I don't want to approve this amendment. I think we should be deferring this amendment and all the rest of the decision on this to the next meeting. So at least some of us could check with staff about legal aspects here.
So you can certainly move that deferral after the amendment is disposed of. There's a second one after this. Is there anything else on the amendment, Councilor Richter? Councilor Kunst on the amendment.
Well, I would have to agree with Councillor Richter. We're moving through third reading and now amendments, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around 5 pages of legal and the things that we heard here tonight, and we're just gonna move along. I don't understand, how we can do this.
Well, there's amendments on the floor, so if there's an anticipation of a deferral or a referral, I would prefer that we consider deferral or referral of an amended version for very minor feedback that we got during the process. Councilor Ferguson?
Yeah, it's a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor. The minimum percentage, that's a minimum. They can put as many 3 bedrooms if they wish.
These are policy items which do not trigger a third public hearing.
That's correct.
Yeah. Is that correct, Mr. Cooner?
That's correct, Your Worship.
That's
It's
correct.
policy items, and that's a minimum. Proponents can choose to add more than the minimum of 10%.
That's correct. Again, consistent with what council did this afternoon. So I see no other speakers on the amendment. I'll call the question on the amendment to be 1. And that carries with Councilor Kunst, Councilor Richter opposed. Ms. Little, you could bring up the second policy ones, please. Great. So this is other feedback that we received during written submissions. So I'll move that. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councilor Rent. Is there any discussion on this? So it's on the floor. It's right there on the screen. Remove the requirement for rear entrance to dwelling units separate and for vehicular parking. So we make it more consistent. Mr. Cooner, maybe give some background on this. Again, it's submissions that we heard that I would like to move an amendment on third and final. Go ahead.
Yeah, that is correct, Your Worship. So some of the proponents or written submissions did take into consideration the concerns of having swing doors. That was a policy item within the plan itself. Now this amendment would remove that policy item at section 552 and section 551, and that within the proposed Williams neighborhood plan.
I believe that provides some flexibility to produce some additional housing within the plan. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's
It
what I
provides some
think.
flexibility to the proponents.
Yeah. And I considered that and I verified that and I'm comfortable with moving the amendment. If council doesn't support it, that's perfectly fine. Is there any other discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, call the question on that amendment to B1. That carries to Councilor Richter and Councilor Kunst opposed. So now to the main motion as amended. I'll clear the queue. Is there any other speakers on the main motion as amended? Councilor Kunst, go ahead.
I would actually like to defer the whole thing until we get some legal advice as to what it is that we heard here tonight.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councilor Richter. Yeah, go ahead. Is there any other wish to speak to that any further? You wish to defer this for one meeting? Is that what you're, just want to be specific on your deferral?
Sure, yeah, like at least for one meeting.
Was it one meeting or is it at least one meeting?
Well, if we can get back, from legal what it is that we're actually facing here and the implications of actually giving this third and final.
So you moved deferral. That was seconded. Ms. Little, what do you have on the floor?
That third and final reading of the Williams Neighborhood Plan be deferred for legal advice.
Okay, great. Is there any other discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question on that. Is that a deferral, I guess? Is that deferral for one meeting on B1? That deferral fails with Councilor Rint, Mayor Woodward, Councilor Van Popte, Councilor Pratt, Councilor Ferguson opposed. Councilor Kearns, did you have anything further?
No.
Councilor Martins, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a little perplexed. I know we just had some amendments here to perhaps clean up based on feedback we've had from people, but I feel like we're missing the elephant in the room. We just had some pretty significant public input here from several speakers that we're not even attempting to make any amendments on. So, and when I look at the map, I don't know if it's possible.
You can bring that back,
for
Mr. Cooner.
The
first
difference
point.
between the
Yeah.
previous and the current. Thank you. So earlier today, we looked to repeal neighborhood plans that were years in the making because of the latest round of legislation from the province with regards to housing. And now we're looking to approve community plans that have single-family dwellings at the south end of it. So I feel that this is contradictory. We're treating one neighborhood one way and another neighborhood a different way. I have a concern about that, and I haven't received an explanation for why it's okay in this instance and not in the other. I brought it up earlier today, and all I received was okay, and the conversation moved on. So in the absence of having it explained to me why it's okay in this plan to have single-family dwellings, but it's not okay with Brookswood or Booth-Ryn, I would really appreciate some clarification. If I'm supposed to make what I consider to be a very substantial decision here that's impacting certain people by millions of dollars, somebody needs to clarify this for me. What's the difference?
Mr. Cooner?
Yes, the other repeal or the motion that was considered earlier today at the regular council meeting was to seek, or first to get a decision to see if we would be exempt from the provincial legislation and subsequently potentially initiate the repeal process. This plan technically is not adopted yet. Therefore, it may be that to initiate a repeal of it or a deferral may be premature at this stage, and we can still explore the option to see if an exemption is granted. The size of the single family in comparison to the Brookswood, Fernridge, and Booth neighborhood is substantially greater in that neighborhood in Brookswood than it is in the proposed Williams neighborhood version that we have at this time.
And I believe, Mr. Cooner, the bottom right corner, a substantial amount of that yellow is likely a detention pond, not actually housing.
That is correct, Your Worship. If you actually, it's extremely small, and I can barely see it myself, but in the right corner, it's a DP sign, which means detention pond.
There's a detention pond in that area somewhere, which I understand is quite sizable.
That's correct.
So then why is it colored yellow indicating single-family dwellings,
Mr.
if
Cooner?
that's the case?
Historically, we haven't color-coded any detention ponds. We've created a floating symbol that just signifies that there's a detention pond in the area.
Okay. And from what you're saying, Mr. Cooner, if I'm understanding, so we could go ahead and proceed with this, and then we proceed with repealing. I'm not understanding why we're making work here. Why are we not waiting then at all? And so I would support a deferral because we are waiting on the province, and I think we're really splitting hairs here, and I'm not sure why. And I take great responsibility when I consider the investment that the proponents have brought forward tonight on these lands, the impact it has, the economic impact it has on our community as well by not proceeding. I drive by it all the time, and I can see that there's been a lot of preparation put into this site. This isn't all fanciful ideas and notions. It's actually proceeding, and as I heard, it's already past third reading. I have a lot of difficulty with just going ahead and ignoring that, but looking at other minor adjustments and taking that all step by step and not looking at this. So I have a significant problem, but I think the biggest one is what's already been said at the table. We need legal opinion, the impact of this decision.
Yeah, so the yellow there, the last remnant pieces potentially to the west of that, what is that thing? What is that? I don't see the freeway landscape buffer. What is that middle, that green thing in between the yellow there? I can't quite read the lettering.
I believe, Your Worship, it's a conservation area.
Conservation area, yeah. So there would be a relatively small percentage of single family remaining in that portion. So that could be dealt with via an OCP amendment process, I believe, much easier than we're facing in Booth, Ryn, and Fernridge. Would that be potentially correct?
Potentially, Your Worship, it could be dealt with through an OCP amendment.
Yeah, so I think that those comments to be taken to heart, that it may seem that way, but I don't think it is that way. Councillor Van Popte, go ahead.
Yeah, so 6 weeks ago, there was direction given to staff in regards to the delegations that we've had tonight in regards to the civic portion of those 8 acres. So we've had 6 weeks for feedback from the proponent of concerns, and I find out at 7 o'clock that there's concerns, and I particularly think that that's maybe, I'm not sure the motive behind that why we're finding out at the table that there's concerns rather than the 6 weeks prior to. And so for that reason right now, I gotta think about what I'm doing here.
Councillor Richter?
You know, just to follow up on that comment, I thought I heard tonight that 6 weeks ago, there was no discussion with regards to the north of 80th Avenue. It was all focused in on the south of 80th Avenue. And now what's in front of us tonight contains a significant change to the north of 80th Avenue, which landowners up there are claiming was not handled procedurally or legally fair.
Mr. Cooner, can you maybe clarify?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Is Mr. Cooner a municipal lawyer? Because I think this is a municipal law question.
Well, you can certainly hear his comments. If you can certainly discard them as well. Mr. Cooner, do you have any input?
The only item I can say at this time is that it was at the October 23rd public hearing meeting that a deferral motion was made that was extremely prescriptive, and within that, specifically in relation to these lands, it did, paragraph 5 did include, stated include a new land use designation location for a civic institutional use and primary municipal operations center north of 80th adjacent to 216th, potentially contiguous with the contemplated detention pond for the area. So staff took that deferral motion and produced this version of an updated plan. That was on the October 23rd, 2023 public hearing meeting.
Okay, so why was it put up there? Why wasn't it put down south where the majority of the discussion focused, where the detention pond is now going? Why is it all of a sudden plunked in the north part?
Through your worship to Councillor Richter, was that a question directed at staff?
Well, it's a legal question that I have. And I think that's even more reason why we should be deferring this for councillors who are concerned to at least have one meeting to look into the legal aspects of this.
Councillor Kuntz?
Yeah, I have some concerns about all the density that's actually on 80th and 216th there. We went from single family to townhouse to now high density apartment and medium density apartment right along the ALR. So I always thought that we were going to maybe buffer that in some way, and I think I've even heard comments about not having high density along ALR land. So I was just wondering, if, we could just go back to the existing plan. I mean, if we're going to repeal the Brookswood neighborhood plans, I have no idea what we're doing with this updated bylaw number 5799. And I say we just stick with the existing plan.
Okay. Seeing no other speakers, Councillor Martins, go ahead.
Yeah, and sorry, I just need to follow this one up. I'm confused by the dates. So I know at October 23rd, there was a referral to staff to make some changes. And he said, as Mr. Cooner mentioned, it's very prescriptive. But at what point did the owners of that property who have had a significant change potentially imposed on them, on what date would they have been made aware definitively exactly what this looks like?
Through your worship to Councillor Martins, the deferral motion was on October 23rd, 2023 at the public hearing meeting. And then I believe staff did work on the revisions pursuant to that, and the notices were mailed out. And I may have it before me on the slide here. The required notifications pursuant to the Local Government Act were sent out or advertised in the newspaper on November 27th and November 22nd as well. Public hearing notices were sent to owners and occupants.
Thank you. So if I'm looking at the calendar correctly, that's not 6 weeks. Is that, am I correct? They did not have 6 weeks' notice since leading up to this.
From the date of November 22nd, is that what you're asking, Your Worship, through Your Worship to Councillor Martins?
Because that's when they were notified. That's the first date. So it's not 6 weeks ago. I just want to be clear about that. And I did, the affected owners did reach out to me once they found out. So no, it wasn't just tonight that they came out of nowhere, kicking and screaming. They did actually do due diligence. They spoke to me. I can't explain why other councillors might not have heard or communicated with them, but I certainly did hear, and I think they've done every effort they can correctly in due diligence to bring their concerns to light.
Mr. Cooner, keep putting back the Toronto News map. Yeah, to be the difference between the other differences between the two versions is there seems to be, I think this is now, I think we did this in another plan, but we're seeing park sites and school sites being openly designated. Could you explain that, please?
That is correct. Historically, we have done floating symbols for school park sites. And in this version, we have openly designated the school and park sites in the plan. As you can see in the previous version, there's floating symbols. I believe that even in that version, there was some consideration of it, but we've openly designated it.
And just to clarify, so those are designations, not rezonings. They're designations within a plan?
That is correct, Your Worship.
That's correct. Are those lands being expropriated?
Your Worship, a land use designation technically under the official community plan does not affect a private property rights. It simply requires that future council bylaw and works decisions are supposed to be consistent with the contemplated official community plan. So a land use designation under the official community plan is not a regulatory exercise. It's a forward-looking document that includes broader policies and land use designations to set out a local government's long-term vision and objectives for community development.
Great, thank you. Seeing no other discussion, I'm going to call the question on B1 as amended.
Call it.
What's your point of order, Councillor Richter?
Did Councillor Martins have a motion that she wanted to make?
She did not move a motion. You have a motion all of a sudden. Go ahead.
Well, it's not all of a sudden. I think I've been speaking to it pretty clearly.
Okay, go ahead. This is your third time speaking to the main motion. Go ahead.
So am I permitted to
Go ahead, make your motion.
motion?
Yeah.
Okay, I would like to move that this decision be deferred until the first meeting in January.
Okay, is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Kunst. Is there any other discussion on the deferral? No, seeing none, call the question on the deferral of B1. The deferral is defeated. Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popte, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Ferguson opposed. Now back to the main motion B1 as amended. No other discussion? Call the question on B1 as amended. And that carries with Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popte, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Ferguson in favor, opposed by Councillor Kunst, Councillor Richter, Councillor Martins. Can a motion to terminate? Moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. Thank you.